What's up, guys? How's it going? The under, by the way. People making predictions for over-under. We're going to be late 2.5 minutes. The under hit. Congratulations to everybody who's taking the under.
Back-to-back streams, I think.
I know. That's a record. People not thinking that's going to actually happen, but we have done it. Finney Brooks with the eyes emoji. I think that's for us getting here basically on time. Or maybe it's something else, but we got lots to cover, get into. Eagles news, rumors, speculation, whatever you want to call it, but drop a like for us, as always. Shout out to you guys in the chat. We appreciate it. Surpassing, I think it was like last time we were streaming, I mentioned it, but 153,000 subscribers. You guys make the community the best what it is. Also, feel free to scan the QR code and get signed up with Underdog. Use code Philly Special. $5 play gets you $75. And there are props available now, which is kind of a surprise. We haven't seen those before, but props for the big game. So if you've not gotten in on that, like the what color of the Gatorade, the length of the national anthem, the coin toss, I'm not going to lie, I may have dipped into that occasionally in the past. It's been a little while since I've taken one of those props, but I don't know. Have you ever been a fan of Super Bowl props?
I've never actually personally bet on any of those as far as like the weird ones, like you said, the length of the national anthem or the Gatorade color, but it is kind of funny to think about. Just something extra to kind of, because a lot of the times, like odds are your team isn't playing in the game, right? But you still want to try and like have something else to watch for outside of the game, or obviously the commercials are what I know my wife looks forward to, and a lot of people that aren't very interested in football look forward to. So, but nowadays it feels like a lot of those are spoiled beforehand, so that's kind of whack. But it's fun to kind of say, oh, it's going to be yellow, it's going to be purple, it's going to be green. I think one year there was like they didn't actually show on TV what color it was, so like that whole bet got voided.
Look
so
out! That's
we'll see what happens. I'm interested to see what the options are.
I was gonna say, got to be careful with whenever they don't share it. And it's obviously the rigged part to it. But yes, there's all sorts of things that you can get in on for the action of that. I don't know that I will this Super Bowl, so full transparency. But there's a ton of just ridiculous options out there, which I always find fascinating. It is, I mean, kind of a given as well that usually the yes is for people, or one of the favorites is like people taking a yes for there to be a safety, yes for there to be a 2-point conversion, and yes for there to be overtime, because those are big payouts for the yes to hit. But obviously, more often than not, it doesn't happen. But it is interesting, just as far as not having a dog in the fight, so to speak. And we got Super Bowl week and everything else. But obviously, for us, there's still Eagles news. There's still things to talk about. There's questions. There's lots of questions. And we said this back on Friday for the stream, and lots of you guys, I'm seeing that y'all were there on Friday, so this is not a huge surprise. But the Eagles, we're not going to be losing Vic Fangio as of then, which we reported from Anthony Gargano, and then you had shared from that report. And then Jimmy Kimsky had confirmed that as well. But then some people took that, and I don't know if they're hearing different things or it's the same source and just a little bit of different rewording, or trying to extrapolate from that or extend it for a week because there's not a whole lot of news, like hard news, to make more of a controversy, or it's legit. But it's sounding like from Jimmy Kimsky and others, and EJ Smith confirming earlier today, I think, or yesterday. My days are all flying together with this offseason. Eagles not actually playing anything, but recently being reconfirmed that Vic Fangio, the expectation is he will be back as defensive coordinator. There's not really major concerns, but for people that are out there like, oh my gosh, who's it going to be? Jim Schwartz is a possibility. That was where it was for a while. But I think that we can, we're fingers crossed, we're not jinxing this thing, but I think that we can move forward here planning on Vic Fangio being the defensive coordinator.
Yeah, it seems like there are enough signs and people that I respect, like you mentioned, Anthony Gargano, Jimmy Kemsky, EJ Smith, all saying that he is going to return for next season. Obviously, beyond that, who knows what's going to happen? It seems like after last season, they were pretty much, or when they won the Super Bowl, that it was like he was on kind of making the same decision, right? It's like on the fence. Part of me wonders, though, Vic Fangio's been in the game for a long time, right? Now that he won a Super Bowl, he's basically done it all. But the report came out, I believe, when Brian Flores going back to Minnesota, like that he wasn't going to take a head. Like if he didn't get any head coaching jobs, he was going to return there. Mm-hmm. And apparently he became like the highest paid non-head coach, like the highest paid coordinator in the NFL. I believe that was a report that was out there. So part of me is like, maybe Vic Fangio's like,
$6 million is what I saw. So, but yes,
yeah.
That's
so maybe he's like, you know what? I'm a better defensive coordinator than this guy. I won a Super Bowl. Like maybe I should get 7 million a year. So maybe it was part of the negotiation. Maybe he's just kind of he knows how valuable he is to this Eagles team, obviously, and how they've built the roster since he's arrived. So that I think that probably played into it. I wouldn't be surprised if he did get a raise to kind of because I know I've heard that some Eagles players reached out to him while he was contemplating the decision, and that I think others have reported that as well. So between that and I'm sure some money under the table or on the table, whatever it was, because they don't have to make any coaches' contracts public for whatever reason that is. So we never really know 100% what they're making and what they're not making. So there's no cap limit for the coaches. But either way, on the bright side, it seems like Vic Fangio is returning. Although, like you mentioned, like you get a positive report and then you get like a Jeff McClain who's like, oh, it's not 100%. Nothing's been announced. But the Eagles aren't going to announce it, right? Like that's not something you come out and say like,
Yeah.
oh, he's going to return. He's under contract. Like it's basically like and the same thing with a lot of the changes to the coaching staff. If there are going to be positional coach change, like you're not going to see that until basically they show up for OTAs or rookie minicamp, whatever it is, and you'll see these guys around the facility wearing the midnight green and the Eagles gear. So I don't expect the Eagles to come out and be like, official, Vic Fangio is returning. Like there's not going to be anything like that. So you kind of just have to take everybody's word for what it is. And it seems like he will be returning in 2026.
Exactly. And I mean, we all understand Fangio and his persona of he's also not going to hold a press conference or certainly nothing on social media to be like, I'm coming back. Like, congratulations, everyone. It will literally just be like, OTAs or whatever, or whenever the next time we hear from Vic Fangio, and someone will probably ask him about it and be like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm here. Like, we're moving forward to the next season. Like it's just like a non-story, as much as it had all of our nerves shot for a little bit. But on the flip side of that, I can understand that if there's not a 100% certainty, anyone could basically go out there and go, well, hey, there's still uncertain. We don't know for sure because, at any point, someone could obviously, or Fangio could obviously change his mind. But yeah, I'm feeling a lot better about it. I was feeling good Friday, but feeling even better as we move forward and hearing some other things like you're talking about, rumblings, other reports of players and the Eagles brass reaching out, trying to make up his mind or help make the decision. I think he understands a lot of things. Obviously, family comes first, though, so if he needed to make a decision for some reason, we would certainly understand that. But yeah, feeling good for Fangio. There's lots of other decisions, though. I mean, lots of other questions to talk about. I'll just preface this, and actually, I'm curious before I go there. Let me just ask this too, and this maybe goes for you as well, Anthony. And in the chat, feel free to jump in here. But what's the biggest question that you have for the Eagles right now, or maybe like moving forward? It could be an individual person, player. It could be an organizational thought or structure, coaches. I mean, whatever we're talking about. But what is the biggest question on your mind? I'm curious for the chat, but like I say, for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the controversial topic of kind of the offseason as a whole. I feel like it was controversial during the season as well. To me, it has to be the future of AJ Brown, right? Like, is he going to get traded? Is hiring Sean Mannion and bringing Josh Grizzard in enough to kind of make him happy and lay out this plan and say, listen, you're going to run the same routes that this guy ran and you're going to get 100 catches or whatever. Like, I just don't know if he wants to be here or not, right? Because I know nobody wants to entertain the thought of him being traded and this $40 million dead cap hit, and people are like, they'll never do it because of the cap hit when they did the same thing with Carson Wentz. Granted, kind of both sides wanted out at that point. It seemed like they had Jalen Hurts kind of in the pipeline waiting to step up behind him, but it's not like they haven't taken huge dead cap hits before, right? They literally structure these contracts to where they're willing to take on these dead cap hits even when a player isn't here. They're paying Darius Slay and whoever else, like a Dallas Goedert potentially next season. Like, they're paying these guys tons of money, but that's just the way that they structure these contracts, right? So they already accounted for that money. That's it is what it is. It's just a matter of if they trade him, if it's before June 1st or after June 1st, because then if it's before June 1st, where they would get draft compensation, hopefully for this year's draft, they would obviously eat all of that, the $40 million total this year. Whereas if it's after June 1st, they can kind of split it up between 2026 and 2027. So either way, to me, I would personally bet on AJ Brown being on a different team next season. And I don't think a lot of people want to hear that, and I fully understand that. But just watching him on the field, watching him off the field, how he didn't talk to the media for the entire last month or two of the season, and that's just, I don't have access to him anyway, so that doesn't bother me one way or another. But I mean, read the tea leaves. I know you want to just be like with the midnight green glasses on and say everything is fine, but it didn't look fine, both on and off the field. So can they make it work? Sure. I'll never say never. I learned that after the Saquon Barkley my Saquon Barkley prediction. But
Sure.
yeah, to me, I think that is the biggest question that's going to be hanging over their heads until, I mean, honestly, until training camp, to when he has to report, and we'll see what happens there.
And it's definitely going to be around the rest of the league, whether or not like he is here, whether he's not, or whether he is or not. Either way, but basically, you see it from the Super Bowl and San Francisco. Lots of media members, obviously, there for Radio Row and extra. Whether it's reports, rumors, speculation, however you want to classify it, because I totally get it. Like there's people in the comment section, there's people on social media, and it's sides of both that are being taken very, feels like decisively for a lot of people. There is some gray between this of, like AJ staying, going, and it doesn't even necessarily mean like you want him to, as you're talking about there. It's not saying, oh, we want AJ traded, but it's just looking at trying to read the tea leaves and seeing where this thing might be headed. You do wonder, and it's like it's a difficult situation to be in, because I think that even we've heard about this. Heck, we go back to last season, or and we're back to last season already, but like 2 years, and it's kind of been like, well, is AJ happy? Is he going to be here? Is he not? And AJ had the last offseason, or towards the very end of the season, hopping on, I think, the WIP interview, right? Like he calls in and goes through that whole drama in that instance there, maybe even 2 years ago. So it's not like this is new. And so I could see it again from both sides of one of like, look, this is tired. Like this happens every single offseason just about. We talk about it and there's some drama and maybe he's upset, maybe he's not. He said he wants to be in Philly. It's a non-story. But then there's the other part of it going, yes, but you do see relationally with certain guys, and especially Jalen Hurts, that it didn't seem to be good and seemed to get worse. However, there was a certain point, and I can't recall exactly when, but there was a certain point this past season where it looked terrible, and then it actually got a little bit better. We're like, oh, hey, Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown are celebrating a touchdown. I can remember they celebrated in the Chicago one. They were getting blown out, kind of, but they scored a touchdown, and he went over and celebrated with him. So at some point, something changed. But again, it's to both sides of the story. Some people are going like, yeah, well, they're just doing that for the cameras. And then others that are like, no, that's a legit change, and I'm going to take it at face value. We don't know. And who even knows out of the people that are reporting the stories, right? Because they're getting bits and pieces of what they're being told. Could it be an agent? Could it be AJ posturing on one side? Could it be the Eagles posturing on one side? Like, oh, well, just try to make this easier if and when they had to move on from him. And I think that's the difficulty. But I am with you of, it's probably the biggest question. I mean, you're talking about when he's locked in, a guy who is top five, at worst, top five receiver in the NFL. And the Eagles are obviously the best, at their best, when A.J. Brown is playing. But it still comes back to the question, and I've had people share this as well. Just because it's the best player, sometimes the best situation is to still move on from that. If the morale and the vibes and the locker room, the culture, all of that is hurt or flawed, or there's just something else that is just not really jiving right, then yeah, you got to move on from. So that is kind of the constant question. And I think that I get the thought and talk of like, it's tired, or we've talked about this a whole lot, but it's only going to get it's only going to get hotter as we get closer to the draft, like you talk about, especially with the June 1st before, after, designation. But it basically means, are they going to trade him before this year's draft, or are they going to wait? Because if they don't trade him at the draft, then I think that we could all say, well, they're going to wait, or at least as far as the designation wise, and trade him post June 1, if they were going to trade him, but wait till post June 1, because like it doesn't do you any favors at that point. You don't get a draft pick for this season.
Yeah, it's going to be such a fascinating situation to watch play out, right? Because neither me or you or anybody is saying that the Eagles are going to be a better football team by trading away A.J. Brown, right? Like, we all know how talented he is when he is 100% committed and happy and involved in the offense. But like I said, you can't just dispute and pretend that what we saw over this last season didn't happen, right? And even at the end of the year, when Jalen Hurts was asked questions in the locker room, and he was like, when the locker room queen out or whatever it was, he was like, oh, why don't you guys go ask A.J. Brown yourself? Like, he knew damn well what he was doing. And I know he said he has a good relationship with A.J. Brown, whatever, but I'm sure these players are frustrated with having to answer for another grown man when he's kind of bringing a lot of this on himself, and he doesn't want to be there to actually answer for it. So to me, that's got to be a weight that I feel probably the entire team is feeling, whether they want to say it or not. And I think that plays into it, right? Because, and like you mentioned, as far as the reports that come out and you're not going to hear anything, or at least I wouldn't think, especially now, from the Eagles building, where it's like, oh, the Eagles want to trade AJ Brown. Obviously, they want as much leverage as they possibly can have going into any potential trade negotiations, right? They're already kind of playing on their back foot with everything that people saw happen on the field, where Nick Sirianni's yelling at AJ Brown in pretty much their last game of the season, right? Like, none of that looks good for them, where they're not negotiating from an advantageous position with AJ Brown and trading him away, right? The rest of the league can kind of see this coming. So, of course, there's going to be reports from anonymous executives or an AFC, like somebody on the Patriots, of course, is going to be like, oh, yeah, we think he's going to get traded because all of 31 other teams want AJ Brown probably on their team, right? So it's going to be so weird and fun at the same time to see how this all plays out, because it could be a nothing. And maybe he's super excited about the addition of Sean Mannion and Josh Grizzard, and he's like, good, I'm in. Put me in the Mike Evans role or whatever you want to put me in, the Christian Watson role, and I think I could thrive there and I'll be great. Or he could be like, these guys have no experience. I'm out of here. I want to go to Mike Vrabel, where I played with in Tennessee or something like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. But I really do think I would bet on, like I said, AJ Brown being on a different team in next season.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that as well. Like a 60-40%. What I was saying on one of the live streams that I went on previously. It's not what I would prefer, like you say, but just realistically, that's where I kind of feel like it is. Again, shout out to you guys in the chat. Get to the first super chat here from Jim with a 5-bomb. Appreciate that one. Says, heard today on Nick Foles' podcast, Friday, ESPN will release the new 30 for 30 entitled The Philly Special, highlighting what the play meant to the area. Yes, that's right. They've, I think that it's been out for a little bit, but I think maybe Nick Foles, or not out, but like announced that it will be coming out soon. But Nick Foles sharing that on his podcast, as he should, because, BDN is the main character energy for that, so it only feels appropriate. But yeah, I don't know of any Eagles fan who won't watch that one. I mean, why wouldn't you? I guess it was the Philly special, 30 for 30 on Friday. But it's a little bit. I'll say this: it's magical. Love rewatching the moments. There's a part of it that makes this offseason a little bit less difficult to get through, I guess, because there's the Super Bowl from last year. But then in another way, it's also kind of more difficult because of like thinking about the talent that the squad had this last year and thinking about the potential and seeing the way that the whole NFL playoffs shook out and thinking, there could have been a really good opportunity that feels like missed out on. But yes, maybe Friday will help just, help us not think about it for a little bit.
That's what's frustrating about this whole situation, right? Is because especially with the Vic Fangio retirement rumors, is he retiring? Was he not retiring? Now we know it seems like he's going to be back. Like it almost made everybody panic for a second. Like, damn, we really messed up this last season when we had such a good defense. And like, granted, they didn't close the season at their best, but it felt like the wasted opportunity given all the talent that they had, especially now with, like we mentioned, AJ Brown's future coming into question. We'll get into Lane Johnson, I'm sure. Was he going to retire? Is he not? What's going on with him? How's his health? So it's going to be fun to be able to watch that 30 for 30. I feel like they do such a good job with those documentaries. You can make a 30 for 30 about anything, and I would probably watch it. I just think the way that they do those is really, really good. So especially it being about the Eagles is going to be fun to watch. And it seems like, I believe they interviewed like everybody involved. So it's like they sit down with Corey Clement, Trey Burton, Nick Foles, Jason Kelsey, I think like literally everybody involved. So it's going to be fun to kind of see all their perspectives. Hopefully they dive into the kind of the build up and how the play was schemed up and when it was installed and all, because we've heard about that, but to hear all of them talk about it collectively in one documentary should be really fun to watch.
Yeah. I'm super excited. I guess go figure, got a Philly special YouTube channel, and why would I not be super excited? But any Eagles fan for that matter. I will say I saw a comment previously. Apologize, I don't remember who it was from, but I did see the comment, so I'll answer it here. Somebody was asking about this hoodie, Breed of One hoodie. This was on Jalen Hurts' website. I think it's jalenhurts.com. I think it's pretty simple, like jalenhurts.com or thejalenhurts.com, something like that. But if you search it, it'll come up. This was his. It's his hoodie. I don't know if they have this color or not still. They may. I think they went.
I don't think so. I feel like I went to look and I couldn't find it, so I don't know if that one is.
So it's an OG.
Josh unfortunately bought the last one.
Sorry.
So.
This is the last one. Maybe we'll do it on a giveaway. No, because we'd only have certain people who can wear it.
A stream used hoodie.
Stream used signed hoodie. Yeah, somebody's really lining up for that one. Okay, I will just share this too really quickly because we were talking about this before we jumped on the stream here. For people that have not seen this, it's from the PHLY, the show from EJ Smith, and just talking about the AJ Brown rumors or speculation, just kind of the vibe that they're getting from the Super Bowl in San Francisco, Radio Row. And again, they're talking to other media members. So, whatever you think about it, feel free to share it in the chat. But I just wanted to share because I did see other people that did not get the report. It's still kind of in rumor season, but it adds a little more context too for the AJ Brown report. So I'm going to try to play this if I can. And here we go.
Being here, talking to people around league circles, it is obvious that there's an expectation that the Eagles will want to move on from him or that AJ will want to be elsewhere. Being here the last 24 hours, that is something that stands out to me, is how much of the conversation is around AJ Brown trade speculation. That's not to say that it's a foregone conclusion, but I think we've been around 60-40 on this show. I think that that's probably about fair from being here and having conversations about it. The second thing, I want to address Diana and like the vitriol for Diana.
Noxious conversation.
Yeah. She does I don't think people appreciate how hard it is to get people to tell you these things 100%. in the fashion that she gets people to tell her stuff. She's an excellent reporter, and she is not afraid to report things that teams don't necessarily want out there, which is very admirable.
Yeah, arguably, in my estimation, the best national reporter.
Yes, I would.
There we go. Got that. Again, clip from PHLY. Second part of that, I know just judging from the comments of Twitter, and probably maybe be some from here as well, the Diana Rossini is also alluding to, I think that she had shared if AJ Brown was to get traded, the thoughts that she's gotten, or I guess the takes that she's gotten from others around the league, were for a second-round pick. But again, it's all speculation for where that is, so you can take it with a grain of salt if you want to, but again, it's the question that's going to continue to get asked. Howie Roseman knows that. He understands it's why he answered the way that he did in the last presser that he had, right, with him and Nick Sirianni, of asking, like, oh, is A.J. Brown going to be here? And he kind of skirted around it of being like, great player, hard to replace great players. When you get an opportunity like that, you got to take advantage. But it was never like, nope, not trading A.J. Brown. It was just love A.J., love him being here, great player, and just kind of saying very similar things to a Carson Wentz. But again, people hear me out. We're not saying it's just for sure going to get traded there. But I think he even understands he doesn't want to deal in absolutes right now because of the way that the landscape is, and he may not know necessarily what offer he may get from a team, and or, as we were talking about a second ago, what necessarily A.J. Brown wants to do, because is a Sean Mannion going to help? I mean, it should help the offense, but does it help from A.J. Brown's perspective and what he wants to do? I'm hopeful, but lots and lots of questions. Lots and lots of questions.
Yeah, I actually like that Bo Wolf brought up that last point, or both him and EJ Smith both mentioned how Diana Rossini is not afraid to put stuff out there that teams might not want out there. And I know Eagles fans, especially, I've been frustrated with just the way that she reports stuff. Sometimes it felt so heavily slanted against the Eagles, but it is important to keep in perspective. And I like that EJ Smith brought that up, because if you're like a local beat reporter, right, this might just be like a little bit of a look behind the curtain, where, because I was lucky enough to have credentials in week 18 or whatever it was, like 2 years ago. So I was in the press box with these other guys that everybody sees on Twitter and either hates or loves their opinions. However, you just see how these people work. But there was a reporter, I'm not going to say who, at that time, they put out a report, they put out an article about something that happened. And literally within a minute or two of that article being put out, they got a tap on the shoulder from somebody that works with the Eagles in the press box and said, come with us. Next thing you know, that person got sat back down. The article was deleted. It was already too late, because, Twitter and social media everybody can see everything. So that report was already out there. Like there was no way to kind of loop it out. But the Eagles literally pulled that report to the side and basically said, take that down. We don't want that out there. Obviously, there's repercussions for stuff like that. Like they could potentially lose their credentials. Where when you're a national reporter, where you don't necessarily have to go to the NovaCare complex every day, you're not at the link every weekend, you don't necessarily have those same restraints, right? Like obviously it's still frowned upon. It might not make you look the best. You might lose a contact here or there, but she might be more willing to kind of put stuff out there that a local reporter that has to go to all the Eagles press conferences and things like that has a little, they have a little bit longer of a leash than that local beat reporter might have. So I know people don't like Diana Rossini for a lot of stuff she puts out, but at the end of the day, she has been the first to report a lot of Eagles news. So like, take it for what it's worth. I know it's easy to get upset when you hear something that you don't necessarily want to hear, but at the same time, I think she does deserve a little bit more credit than she gets.
Yes, and we'll also say too, as you're mentioning with the local beat reporters, they got to deal with Big Dom. So understandably, when someone gets taken away, you know, it
was not Big Dom
probably,
that took that reporter out.
No,
but that would be
but,
funny.
You know,
You just
it
see
would be funny.
Big Dom
in
come in, scoop
room.
him up like a baby, and just carry him in, puts him under the lamp.
Yeah, or someone takes them to talk to Big Dom, right? And they're just like, okay, all right, and then go take him back to the press box. You're good. Okay, we've come to an understanding here. Don't let this happen again. I think it's just good the fact that like there, even though it's not necessarily true, there's some things, but like just to have the aura that Big Dom does. All right, okay, you know what? Hey, if there's a problem, he's gonna be the one to fix it. So, but maybe not necessarily from that sense. Either way, I will say this: I'm excited. I know a lot of people are excited, judging by again the last couple of videos, comments, takeaways from that feedback. We've done a couple Sean Mannion talks through the live streams as well as those videos that I mentioned. But if AJ is here or AJ is not here, and it's just Devontae Smith, and or you have to draft a wide receiver, or AJ and Smitty are here and you draft a receiver, you get a free agent acquisition at that spot because Jahan Dotson is likely going somewhere else. Dallas Goedert, big question there. Doesn't feel like he's going to come back. It would take something almost miraculous at this point. Maybe you draft a Sadiq Bey or you go with someone else of someone there. But as far as the options for receiving wise, I think it's the best case scenario because you've got a guy like Sean Mannion and a guy like Josh Grizzard, which we've talked about, and an ability to make that happen. And by the way, I don't know why I said Sadiq Bey. I said Sadiq. I'm in NBA mood, so yes.
I was going to say you're in NBA trade deadline mode, yes. Which is fair because I texted Josh earlier today. I'm like, listen, and we just make tonight's live stream just about.
We
the
could
NBA
just shift it to it. Yeah, sure.
I'm all for that. A little off-season mode. We change sports, but
you'd be all over that.
It's going to be fun to see how this offense looks. I've already seen everybody post like the route trees and the route charts from NFL Next Gen Stats, where it's like all the ways of the Buccaneers, like you see Kate Otten, the way he ran routes, or Emeka Egbuka, even Mike Evans, like the way all these guys were used, it just seems so much different than what we saw obviously last year with hitch routes 30% of the time or whatever it was. So I feel like we're going to see it very early, whether this is a new offense or not, or if it's just like kind of just slight tweaks from what we've seen from Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts over the last 5 years or so, right? So personally, I hope it seems like based on the changes that they've made so far, and I'd expect more changes with the position coaches as well. I've been clamoring for Aaron Moorhead you don't want to see anybody get fired necessarily, but I mean, I think he would probably land on his feet and go somewhere else. I think he has enough kind of a respect around the league to probably land another job, but he was one of the holdovers from the previous staff. It feels like he hasn't really done much. As like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, obviously phenomenal players, but I think me and you could be the wide receiver coach and they would be phenomenal players, right? I don't think he's really helped take their games to another level, but it feels like everybody else, even when they do get opportunities, because like there were games where AJ Brown was out or whoever was out, and it didn't seem like a Jahan Dotson or anybody else was really stepping up. So it seems like for some reason that the slight at Aaron Moorhead, there are some people that are on Twitter that are like really defending him, like you don't understand everything that he does. It's just like, I feel like it's pretty easy to see if a position coach is helping or not when your team is just making the same dumb mistakes, whether it's like false starts or they're running the same route as somebody else. Like stuff like that should be cleaned up by week 17, week 18, right? Even Jason Michael, the tight end coach, who I know has ties to Nick Sirianni, and if Kevin Patullo isn't returning, he would kind of be one of the last guys standing that does have ties to Sirianni. So although I would like for them to move on from both Aaron Moorhead and Jason Michael, I don't know how feasible that is, but I do think if there are more position coach changes and we see guys, especially that have ties to Sean Mannion or Josh Grizzard, I feel like that would be even more of a signal that this is going to be a drastically different offense that'll look a lot more like both of those coaches have been exposed to throughout their careers.
And that's really what we're all hoping and praying for is less of the Sirianni flavor. Certainly not hitches, but you'll be able to tell, as we've said on a couple different videos, you'll be able to tell, I think, pretty quickly of whose offense it is. I am curious though, and I agree as far as like the Aaron Moorhead and the receivers and development, all the other stuff there. Um, on the flip side of that, there is a argument, and it's always the fine line of like, to what extent do they have talent and guys that can take their game to the next level, can rise up to that. And I've seen some people throw out Christian Parker for that same or similar sentiment, but in the sense of, okay, like Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, we've talked about, brought them from good to great or great to elite, however you want to phrase that. They're all pros. But then people, yeah, but like, bro, what about Keely Ringo? Like, why can't you get that to work out, right? Like, you have some issues with Keely Ringo. You've got some issues with Jacorian Bennett. Could never get anything figured out with him either. Some guys just maybe aren't fixable, right? And so it is hard to weigh from those, but you do look back as well at his resume, Christian Parker, that is, and with Denver and some of the others. Now we've also brought up Patrick Surtain and saying, okay, you're not taking the guy similar to a Smitty. I think that's a good analogy there. Like, well, Devontae Smith was the Heisman winner. Like, he's one of the best coming out of college. So sure, he has an incredibly high ceiling and already a very high floor. So you don't have to be extreme there. But I think there's a little bit more of a track record for a guy like a Christian Parker than compared to, as we've seen for a long time now, like you're talking about with an Aaron Moorhead. And it is just like, okay, cool. We've got Smitty and A.J. Brown. But outside of that, we saw Darius Cooper for a little bit, and it felt like maybe he could do something, and then he got a couple chances and didn't really make the most of it. I know there's a little bit towards the very tail end of the season, but I think it's a little, I don't know, maybe not totally fair, I suppose, to compare those two positional coaches and how those were the same.
No, yeah, I get that. I feel like my biggest thing with Christian Parker was it just felt like he's taken all the right steps throughout his career in terms of like, he's pretty much like worked his way up to this opportunity where he's like started as like a quality control guy. Then it was like an assistant positional coach. Then it was a position coach. Then he had like the passing game coordinator title. He just like worked his way up the ranks, and it never really felt like his units were just downright awful or like making really terrible mistakes. And I know he obviously had some elite talent to work with, right? But how many times have we seen first round corners or second round corners that many thought were going to be great not work out in the NFL? It's one of the toughest positions and the players say it themselves all the time, to have immediate success in the NFL, right? Mm-hmm. You don't usually see a rookie cornerback that comes in and just lights out like Quinyon Mitchell was and Cooper DeJean were their rookie season, and then take a step forward the following season. It's not like they dropped off a cliff and they were 1 year wonders. Like, they just continued to build on that. Quinyon Mitchell had struggles at times, but for the most part, he was even better, right? That's why they made the All-Pro team. So I don't know. I know people want to use that like comparison, like you mentioned, because of the elite talent that both of them have been handed. But it just felt like outside of that, because even like a guy like Adoree Jackson, right? Like, he was thought of as like a washed up old corner, especially after that first week. It's like, oh, this guy's terrible.
Yeah.
What is Howie Roseman doing? And then for most of the season, when he was in the field, he was pretty solid, right? I know I was very high on him, or just came to his defense a lot more than others. And I thought he played well enough, which is what you really need. Opposite of Quinyon Mitchell on the outside. You don't need another elite guy, but you need somebody that can just be serviceable, right? And I thought he did that. And he didn't look like that in New York in the last couple of years. And Christian Parker, whether it was him, whether it was not, but I think he had something to do with that, right? So whereas, like you mentioned, the flashes with Darius Cooper or Johnny Wilson, it's like, wow, they got one catch for 5 yards. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's like, okay, like the bar is set so drastically low. And in Jahan Dotson, it's a former first-round pick. It's not like was some bum undrafted free agent off the street, right? They traded a third-round pick for him. The expectations were much higher. But granted, like you mentioned, with this offense, the third wide receiver has never really been targeted much, right? But it also felt like whenever these other guys were out and the other starters were playing, it didn't feel like Jahan Dotson or whoever else was filling that role ever really stepped up to where you would expect them to. And I think Moorhead has to take some blame for that. And it feels like it could be time for change, especially with a new scheme coming in that's running different routes. And I think it makes sense for Sean Mannion or Josh Grizzard to bring in guys that are familiar with working with them and then familiar with the scheme that they want to teach the players as well.
Well, there's not necessarily familiarity with their scheme, but you talk about wide receiver 3. There's Quez Watkins on the practice squad.
Oh my God! We're gonna We're gonna get rid of Grant Calcaterra and then bring back
Bring
Quez Watkins.
back,
This is
bring
gonna
back
be
Quez. And we're going to throw some wide receiver screens to him, baby. There's going to be good blocking. There'll be some good blocking. He might not choose the right hole, but there'll be some good blocking.
all right. That's the stream, everybody. Thank you,
guys.
guys.
I should just send the chat into a fury right here. It's just- I'm waiting for it. A lot of people did not know that Quez had been lingering this for a lot of the season on the practice squad. It was interesting because it was like, oh, hey, Quez signed to the futures contract. They're like, oh, bro, like you got to be kidding me. It's like, do you not realize he was actually in the building? It just didn't really get talked about too much because it was the practice squad. I know it's different, obviously, for the active roster, but yeah, there's a little PTSD from that one. I do hope that it's a different wide receiver 3, whether it's going to be draft somebody or free agency. I know that we brought this up in the past, and I think somebody in the chat was mentioning this a second ago, but Romeo Doubs, that just feels like very expensive for what you're, trying to potentially bring him in. There's all sorts of projections, but it just feels like that's really high, even considering that the salary cap increase and all the other stuff, because Howie's got a lot of positions to take care of, and wide receiver 3 is not, it's important, but it's not near the top of the list.
Yeah, the big thing to watch for, though, is obviously if A.J. Brown gets traded, right? Because then it's like,
for sure,
how much of a priority do they put on that next player? But I think I've answered questions in my mailbag about it, or people have tweeted to me about like, oh, what about an Alec Pierce, right? Who's probably going to get a lot more money than people realize. I think he could get probably $20 million or more annually with the way that he played last season. But Romeo Doubs, I think he's projected to get around like 10 to 12 million per year or something like that. All of this is speculation. I know Eagles Eric was in the chat before. He does a great job with the contract projections and kind of projecting what these players will make on their contracts. And whether it was last year, he hit on a ton of them, was very accurate. And I'm sure he'll do the same thing this year. But I just don't see the Eagles trading A.J. Brown, taking a huge dead cap hit, whether it's before June 1st or after June 1st, and then turning around and throwing a ton of money at another kind of veteran receiver. I think they would immediately pivot to a first round receiver or somebody on day 2. There are a lot of intriguing wide receivers in this draft. In my latest mock draft, I had the Eagles picking a wide receiver. So if you want to check that out at thephillyspecialshow.com, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, the possibilities are going to be endless. Obviously, Romeo Doubs has that familiarity with Sean Mannion. I mentioned that Cade Otton, the tight end from Tampa Bay, he's going to be a free agent.
Yeah, that's
obviously
a good point.
Has familiarity with Josh Grizzard. So if they do want to, he's a couple years younger than Dallas Goedert. He's a better blocker at this point in their careers. I think he would make a ton of sense personally for the Eagles as they transition, if they do transition away from Dallas Goedert. So there's going to be a couple of different intriguing pass catchers that they could target in free agency. It's just a matter of, like you mentioned, they don't have too much money to work with, and there's going to be a lot of people that they have to pay, right? Whether it's if they want to bring back a Jalen Phillips or a Reed Blankenship, Nakobe Dean, which I don't think is likely, but he's going to be out there as well. And then just extending the guys that are in the building, right? Like a Jordan Davis or a Jalen Carter, however they want to go about that too. So it's going to be interesting to see how everything plays out this offseason, because like they only have projected depending on where you look, some site will say 18 million, another site will say 20 million. They can make other moves to free up more, but I never doubt Howie Roseman. It feels like he could just pull money out of anywhere, and they could always restructure things. Or I saw a loophole on like Eagles Reddit where with Dallas Goedert's contract, because I think he's scheduled to, even though he's going to be a free agent, he's going to have like a $20 million dead cap hit or something like that in 2026, where somebody was like, oh, if they sign him to like it's almost like a fake extension to where they're able to kind of lower that cap hit, but still keep him under contract and spread it out over. Like that stuff is so beyond. I try and grasp as much as I can, but sometimes it's like Zach Galifianakis in Hangover, where all those numbers are just flashing by his head, and he's.
It's everything. Yes,
I try my best to dive deep into whatever I can, but I think the salary cap is something that I come to terms with, where I've reached my limit, where how much I can calculate and then keep track of.
I agree. Yeah, there's only so much. I'm right there. It's like I understand the premise of it, but when it starts to get to, we can restructure it this way and add on, the dummy years and everything, it's like, all right, I know there's a way, and so I trust Howie, and that is why a lot of us, I think, make even the assumptions, or like it never fails. So we'll just go ahead and say this now. Come free agency, we're gonna get some speculation. We're gonna get some names that don't really make a whole lot of sense financially, even for Howie Roseman. But because of the wizard that he is, it'd be like, they can figure out a way to do it. They pay him and backload it and all this stuff. It is true to a certain point. But like you just said too, there's guys that they got to take advantage or take care of internally first. You know, we talk about Jalen Phillips. That feels like the first immediate decision that you make with the extra cap space because of the NFL and the projections there. That'll be north of $300 million for the salary cap. There will probably be some other names out there in free agency, but it is the beauty of having a GM and an owner, Jeffrey Lurie, who's willing to pay big signing bonuses up front and put the dead money towards the end, which is like, okay, that's a gamble because, you know, if it doesn't work out or for whatever reason you have a year like a COVID year that it did decrease, then you're in a really rough spot because the money that you were planning on, like, oh, we'll have more because the league's always increasing, the revenue's always increasing, and it doesn't. That's like a double whammy there. But the Eagles were still able to manage their way out of it. So it's why Howie Roseman is so good at his job, and we don't have as much fear for the front office. And even if and when, you know, he loses his right-hand man or some guys a part of the front office, it's just like, all right, we'll just we'll get the next guys, you know, because we're always good as long as the mastermind is there. Philly boy with a 10 bomb, appreciate that. Thought Howie got too cute last offseason and let too many good players walk. Will he make the same mistake? On topic of what we're talking about here, says Jalen Phillips, ? Nakobe Dean, ? Reed Blankenship, ? How about bringing Mekhi Becton back? Lots of guys.
That's going to be so interesting to see, especially after the way last season obviously worked out, where it seemed like when your boy Isaiah Rodgers, right, was going off in Minnesota, and everybody was like, the Eagles are morons for not bringing him back, and
yeah,
like Adoree Jackson struggled in week 1, right? So it was just like, it was not great. And Isaiah Rodgers had the game where he had like a pick 6 and then a fumble return for a touchdown.
Yeah, both of them with the defensive player of the week, and yeah,
it was just like a worst case scenario for that start of the season. Then he like didn't do as well to end the season, and Adoree Jackson kind of started to play a little bit better. So people were like, all right, we kind of understand it. But then there was other moves like the Mekhi Becton one where people were like, this offensive line has not looked right all season. And it wasn't just Tower Steen. He was far from the only one. And I talked all season long. We talked all season long about Landon Dickerson didn't look right. Jordan Mailata. Like basically everybody played their worst season of their careers, right? All collectively. And whether it was injury, we don't know the exact cause behind it. Sometimes they were just tripping over their own 2 feet, or Grant Calcaterra or Dallas Goedert was tripping Jordan Mailata, whatever. That's a whole other topic for another day. But it just seems like everything that could have went wrong. But it is going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because sometimes we see Howie Roseman like overcorrect, but that's usually more like a position thing, right? Where he's like, like he did with linebackers, where like he just and cornerback, where he drafted Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean back to back. It felt like he either like completely ignores a position and just wants to get by on like these cheap veterans and draft people late or undrafted free agents, or he'll like find that big fish in free agency and try and like overcorrect it, right? So because of the names that they're going to have hit free agency, like a Jalen Phillips, it's going to come down to, like last offseason, how much do they, like how confident are they in the young guys that are there? They were comfortable letting a Milton Williams walk because they had Moro Ojomo, right? Which worked out. I know Milton Williams looks great. He's in the Super Bowl. But I think the Eagles are comfortable saying, like, all right, we let you take your 9-figure deal. Moro Ojomo had more sacks than you ever had with the Eagles, right? So that it's going to come down to, like, do they think Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt are good enough to fill in for the void that created by Jalen Phillips' departure? Because they traded for Jalen Phillips with both of those players on their roster already, right? So I would bet that they're going to try everything that they can to re-sign Jalen Phillips. But with like a Nakobe Dean, I feel like you have to let Jahad Campbell play. You have to just let Nakobe Dean walk, although a lot of fans might not want to see that, right? So Reed Blankenship's going to be the really tricky one because they don't necessarily have that replacement in-house already. I know Andrew Makuba looked good, but that's just one safety. You obviously need two. Could you just sign a Marcus Epps back and you think that's good enough? I don't know about that, because then I feel like you have to draft one, right? So it's going to be interesting to see the Reed Blankenship situation specifically, how that plays out.
Yeah, lots of, and you even have the rumor of Reed Blankenship to, or I don't know the rumor necessarily, because we're not at the free agency, but just speculation, I guess, is the better way to phrase it. Kind of means the same thing, but to Dallas, because, you know, Christian Parker and the ties there, and Dallas could basically upgrade at any position that you want to name on the defense, almost. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to hate it if it's Reed Blankenship and Nakobe Dean, really just either of them. But if it's both of them, that Dallas is like, hey, let's bring over, you know, some of CP's guys. And that's just, it's not going to it's not going to sit well. It's just not going to look right. But it wouldn't be surprising if they were to both move on. I mean, certainly one of the two, but really even both of those, with the way that the situation is, like you talk about, I mean, with some of the other players and trying to sign those and deals that they're probably going to get offered from other teams like a Dallas or like another squad. I don't know. I mean, Philly boys, it's a good question. Like Anthony was saying there, Howie does usually correct his mistakes. Sometimes it's not the immediate ones, obviously, but you think about even a Jalen Phillips, rough math on this. This is not like a 100% confirmation, but it feels like if the Eagles are somewhere in like the maybe a little bit less than $20 million a year range for Jalen Phillips, they could probably figure out a way to get it done because of the push it towards the back end. And you're not taking a $20 million cap hit this season. How we would structure it in a way where, who knows, it's like a $5 million cap hit and we'll go, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Like you get JP for this year, and maybe it's a couple seasons and you're good, but that's where it's manageable. But if it gets above that range, and we're talking about like 25, or I mean, even crazier than that, maybe, I don't know. But like if it's up to that point, I think that Howie would have to just kind of be like, we're moving on. We're gonna have to just settle with what we got, draft some edges, maybe sign somebody else, and hope that they hit in free agency. But again, if that were to happen, and this is just rough estimates here for those numbers, that would probably mean that it's a third-round pick for compensatory pick conversion for Jalen Phillips. That's not what I'm hoping for. That's not what I don't think anybody is hoping for based on what Jalen Phillips brought to the team. But, I mean, we saw it with Josh Sweat. He got a deal that the Eagles also were like, nope, we appreciate it. You're good. But they got to be constantly evolving. And as Howie says all the time, is like constantly evolving, constantly getting younger, looking at ways that they can continue this thing, but still look at longevity. And that's what he was doing. Obviously, with Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, they bet on him picking up the option. We were talking about this offline, but it's a little surprising how many people, for some reason, are under the impression that Jordan Davis is going to be a free agent. He's not, so that's good. They picked up the option there. It's expensive, but it's less expensive than it could have been, having seen the season that he just had. So there is a win there, but there's only so many guys, and it's almost like you have to flip this thing now, because they paid a lot of money on offense and very little on defense. But now you either keep your guys and you start paying them, and then you got to reshuffle with let some offensive players go. And I mean, the conventional wisdom is there, well, mathematically, you got to draft guys because you're probably not signing free agents and going, hey, we got to steal for, multi-year contract. Like, it's just a 1 year prove it. So I don't know. That's where I'm looking at it, saying like offensive line in the draft. You mentioned, and you've had multiple mock drafts on the PhillySpecialShow.com, but you've also mentioned wide receiver, as you were talking about there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it Casey Concepcion was the last wide receiver? Okay, yeah, that was the last mock draft that you had. Yeah, so who knows? But, one of those, something like that for receiver, if they have to kind of shuffle it and get the offense cheaper of sorts.
Yeah, mock drafts always change. It's funny because I've posted 2 now on the PhillySpecialShow.com, and I feel like I always get at least one reply where it's just like, this guy's never going to go in that round. You're an idiot. Why would you ever think that this is going to happen? I'm like, this literally happens every year.
The board fell to. I mean,
but not only that, it's just like, I mean, I'm using these mock draft simulator sites, whether it's like Pro Football Focus or Pro Football Network, whatever it is, right? And it's just like, am I not supposed to take a player? Well, granted, I do try and keep it. I literally go over and I'll look at rankings. I'll look at how other sites have their boys, because right now, especially before the combine, like things are all over the place, right? Like one site could have a guy in the first round, another site could have a guy like late day 3, and it's the same person, and it's just like, why are the rating, like the rankings so different? So there's not really that consensus yet. I feel like usually after the combine and that like March range, you'll get closer to like more of a consensus where like these 50 guys are probably going to be in the first round, right? Which even then it's funny because it's like 50 players. Obviously, there's only 32 picks, but so I always laugh at that. I don't even respond to it anymore these days, where people are like, you think this guy's going to go in the 3rd round? He's a guaranteed first rounder. I'm like, everybody said that about Nakobe Dean, and then he got drafted in the 3rd round.
That's true.
Or
yep.
Cooper DeJean was supposed to be a first rounder. They got him in the 2nd round. So that stuff I try to ignore. But regardless, it is going to be fun like to see how it plays out, because I do think offensive line should be their number 1 focus, assuming they don't trade A.J. Brown, right? But if they do trade A.J. Brown, now everything changes. And like you mentioned, Howie Roseman literally said it to us. He wasn't hiding behind anything when he said, like, we've spent a lot of money on this offense. Now the defense is going to get more expensive. And then he entered the press conference saying, like, don't worry, we can compete now while building for the future. So right away, it felt like, based on how you were already thinking going into that press conference, is how you would take that quote. But to me, that was like listen, if I trade AJ Brown, it doesn't mean we can't win a Super Bowl. It's like, I've got something else up my sleeve. Like, don't criticize me too much for that. So maybe I'm reading too much into it, but like we mentioned, we do think that is a real possibility. And if that's the case, then that means they're going to get cheaper on offense in the future. Obviously, this year they would take that $40 million dead cap hit depending on when it happened. But like you mentioned, they're going to be paying guys like Jordan Davis, I would assume, Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, and Cooper DeJean will be a question that they have to answer in a couple of years as well. So it's just going to be that balancing act that Howie Roseman has to find. And he's shown before that he's able to do it. So I have all the confidence in the world that he'll be able to do so again.
It's Howie season. It's one of the best times of the year, not the best. Some people say that, but I would still argue that I would. Not that you wouldn't want to be playing, but it's just the little bit of difference of I enjoy the roster building aspect. I enjoy the draft. You have the stream and everything else. Which, by the way, I don't know. We haven't officially discussed this, but trying to make this happen, assuming that it works out for your schedule, Anthony. But maybe some draft night stream if you're able to swing it. Okay, all right. We're trying to make that happen. So everybody on the lookout, or the requests that have been made. I think that we can make that happen. So there may be a 3-person stream that we had or that we have. So I'm totally down for that. Got our I don't know if it's a insult or if it's a compliment to say we've got our, I was going to say Todd McShay or Mel Kiper, but I don't know if is that viewed favorably for you, or we've got our in-house
I have
expert?
A ton of respect for all these people, but I'm actually way behind. Usually I feel like I've been so focused now on like,
that's not going to stop you. I'm not worried about this.
I'm going to catch up. Don't worry.
I know that.
I've been watching. I've reported a ton of meetings that the Eagles have had as well. So I have the tracker for that on the PhillySpecialShow.com if anybody's interested in seeing. I know the Eagles probably every team meets with probably every prospect at one point or another, but I've always found it fascinating to try and keep track of whatever has been reported. So right now it's already over 40 players. I believe it's at like 41 players. And I have which players the Eagles have met with, offense, defense, special teams, where they met them, who reported it. So it's all in there on the PhillySpecialShow.com. So more of that to come, more mock drafts. And I love talking about the draft and free agency. And it's like the unknown it's what's so exciting to me, right? Because even as a kid, you do like the franchise in Madden, and I would always just like sim the regular season, the playoffs, and then get to like the draft and free agency and trades and stuff like that. So
now I'm
crazy.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But we love you for it because you're authentic. That's you. I enjoyed the draft. I wasn't simming through the season to do that, but
wait, don't get me wrong. I played competitively online Madden back in the day. So if anybody wants me to pick the sticks back up, we can get down. I can get down.
Okay. See,
I did enjoy playing and doing the drafts and free agency and all that stuff.
It is fun franchise mode and GM wise. Yeah, I can appreciate that. But yes, we will have the stream. We will have the draft, all the coverage there. And like I say, I know that Anthony's not going to be behind on anything. Even if you are now, by the time we get there, we'll be like, oh yeah, you're fully locked in with where we're going. It will be interesting too, because people wondering about the tracker or hearing Anthony say that, like he mentioned, the PhillySpecialShow.com, or follow Anthony at DiBona NFL on Twitter X. Twitter or X. I don't know. Most people still call it Twitter. I know it's not officially, but I think it's just X is weird. But yes, at DiBona NFL. I will say this, as far as the draft coverage itself, the tracker last year was meaningless, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean it in the sense of like the Eagles always used it for the top 30 visits. It was like, oh my gosh, who did they bring in for the and you unfortunately leaked it out to the wrong person, I guess, because they took it. Actually, was it last year or was it the year before that the Lions actually bookmarked it, or they tagged it to the list? Wasn't it that Lions scout?
An assistant scout like started following me on Twitter and then bookmarked my top 30 visit tracker for the Eagles.
Yes.
And that was before the 2024 draft. That wasn't last year.
Okay. I was going to say, I remember that now though. So see, people are watching. and maybe Howie as well. So he goes, all right, you know what? We're going to use this to our advantage this year because this one guy, Anthony DiBona, whoever this is sharing all of our visits, and he's tracking it for people to follow up on. And Dallas looked at that last year, and they were like, oh, perfect. We don't even have to do our homework. Like, we're just going to copy Howie Roseman here. I mean, they drafted almost every guy off of the Eagles' top 30 visit. Now, a lot of those Dallas also met with, but it was funny how many you go down the line. You're like, huh, is this an Eagles draft or is this a Cowboys draft? Because it's all the guys they met with.
It's actually, this is just names off the top of my head, but the Giants took Marcus Bowe, who the Eagles had a top 30 visit with. The Cowboys took multiple players. I know Donovan Ezeraku for sure was one of them.
Jaden Blue.
The Commanders, Josh Connerly was also another player that visited the Eagles. So at least all three teams in the NFC East drafted a player that the Eagles had in for a top 30 visit, and the Eagles didn't draft a single one. So it was the first time in several years where that was kind of like my brand. I was like, this is why I track the top 30 visits, because everybody's saying they're meaningless. There's no point. And I'm like, at least four picks in like each of the last 5 drafts or something like that came to Philadelphia on top 30 visits. And then last season, literally not a single pick visited the Eagles before the draft. So a little bit of a maybe the Eagles caught on and they saw what I was doing and they saw me on. Like, listen, we got to change our plans. But I also think it could have been the way the board fell, because it was funny in a lot of situations last year. If you go back and look at the draft, it was like a team would leap ahead of the Eagles a couple spots, or they were drafting a couple spots ahead, and they would take a player that the Eagles hosted on a visit. So it almost felt like they were like, we got to take somebody now because the Eagles are definitely taking them in a couple spots.
Yes, and I can say this now, not specifically who it was, but I can say this now because we're a year past it. But that is exactly what happened. I've been told by someone who was very, very close to what was happening draft-wise. I'll just say that it was missing out on at least 2 times when they traded back, and it was like, why are they not picking? But it was because they had a player that they wanted, got drafted, and they're like, dang it, that's not really who we wanted now. Trade back.
Can I guess the side of the ball? Because
sure.
I think offense?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I think I know exactly what happened. So
okay. Yep.
We'll talk after.
We will. Yep. And for people that want to speculate, go back and watch the draft and see how it unfolded. You know, you could go back and I think pretty easily see, especially if you want to compare the top 30 visits and see some of those that were probably on the radar and then got taken right before. But that is, it's what makes it fun. It's totally unpredictable. It's never the same thing. Howie's talked about it in so many different interviews, right? Of like, you try to plan for every scenario, but every single year the draft unfolds differently. It's why we all love the mock drafts, right? Because, I mean, or the vast majority, I know some people don't, but the vast majority like the mock draft because every draft is a little bit different. And every draft is like, oh, well, he's not going to be available, or, oh, no, you're not going to get that. Well, guess what? When we were doing back at, and this is the one that I really recall, I know Quinion falling that far. I was like, oh, that's not going to happen. Cooper Jean, that's fine. But Jalen Carter and Nolan Smith, like that was one of those that I posted on a video of like, oh, we got Jalen Carter. They're like, no, there's no way. Nolan's going to be the best case scenario at 10. Jalen Carter's going to be taken top 3. There's no way the Eagles could get both of those in the first round. They're like, well, only had to trade up for one spot and got
especially
both of those
after
guys.
That combine that Nolan Smith had, right? Because I remember myself, I was saying like, oh, he's not even gonna get out of the top 10. I'm like, there's no way he jumped like 40 inches. He ran a 4.4.
He's faster than Saquon Barkley.
Yeah.
So,
like, I think everybody, including myself, was wrong about like where Nolan Smith was going to go. It's just, you never know with the draft. There's always going to be surprises, and whether it's people that go ahead of where you thought they were or people that fall well beyond where you thought they would be. So it's such an unpredictable science, but there are so many people that think they have it down to a T when they really don't at all.
Yeah, but it's what makes it fun. See, Texas boy saying safety from Toledo is basically an Emenwari clone, a Nick Emenwari clone. Well, let's just say this. We were both saying Nick Emenwari would be a phenomenal pick if you could get him last year. You know, you can't win them all. I don't know if he happens to turn into, or if he ends up playing like Nick Emenwari does this season. Now, sometimes, you know, it's like, man, they play phenomenal their first year, and then there is a little bit of a hiccup, but it does feel like he's certainly one of those that's kind of the unicorn, because the dude's, I mean, built like a linebacker, plays in hybrid positions, situations, can do a little bit of the nickel, much better than I think a lot of people anticipated. Hasn't played it as much, but still just the versatility. And it's crazy. So we'll see how that shakes out on Sunday. We won't go with our Super Bowl projections or predictions right now, but Anthony and I will obviously record for the video that'll probably drop on Saturday. So stay tuned for that, which we will have the official predictions for the Super Bowl. And we'll probably do some sort of giveaway. Even though the Eagles aren't playing, if you get the prediction correct or whoever's the closest, I'll figure something out. But you guys know how we roll. Fanny with a 5-bomb. Appreciate that. Hey, Josh, Ant-Man, who took Christian Parker's place, and has Clint Hurt taken the job with the Dolphins? Who do you like to replace him? Well, good news. Clint Hurt cannot take the job with the Dolphins because Jeff Hafley hired... Oh, why is that name escaping me? It was the linebackers coach at the Packers.
Sean Duggan, I think.
Duggan. Okay, I think that's right. I was going to say Sean. I knew the first name, but yes,
it was like
Sean
the guy
Duggan.
that was with him at Boston College, I believe, and then followed him or something like that.
Yes, yep. Connections on that side. So thankfully, as of right now, which it's getting so late in the process, I mean, I don't even know which defensive coordinator positions are still open off the top of my head. I don't know if you know that, but I'm pretty confident at this point that Clint Hurt is fingers crossed, but going to remain for at least one more season with the Eagles. And then CP, did they announce Joe Casper officially? Okay, I was going to say, I thought they did.
They didn't. I don't think they officially announced anything.
Okay.
I don't think the team announced it. Like I said, usually probably around like April or May, whenever they have the rookie minicamp, OTAs, whatever it is, where that's when like Kellen Moore first took the podium, and that's where you saw they announced the coordinators, obviously, but usually the slight changes to like position coaches or like the titles within the coaching staff, we usually don't see until around May or so. So it's been reported by several people that Joe Casper was bumped to that pass game coordinator / safety coach or whatever title he has, whatever the defensive back coach. And now they probably have to fill the role that Joe Casper had as the safety coach, which we probably won't hear much about until later on, like I mentioned. But I think it seemed like there was a lot of momentum. Once Christian Parker left, there were quite a few different beat reporters that were like, Joe Casper's a name to keep an eye on, Joe Casper. And then sure enough, it was like reported like an hour or so later that was the move that they did. So they seem like he's a guy that followed Vic Fangio to Miami. He was in Philadelphia before Vic Fangio, then followed Vic Fangio to Miami, and then followed him back to Philadelphia. So it seems like he's a guy that the Eagles think highly of. He's a guy that Vic Fangio thinks highly of, and seems to have a bright future ahead of him in the NFL.
And I loved his statement of I can't remember if it was on the press conference there or if it was Zach Berman. I think it was maybe Zach Berman just sharing some of the quotes. But like you're talking about, like following Vic Fangio and him still having a lot more to learn and not really wanting to rush things and all that other stuff.
Yep.
But having been a part of the system and Cooper DeJean, like you mentioned, Cooper DeJean, there was like 3 quotes that Zach had in that article, and I'm drawing a blank now. It was Cooper DeJean, I think maybe it was, I guess, Reed, I think, because safeties-wise. So Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, and maybe Andrew Mukuba. I think so, as far as Joe Casper. I know
I also know
about Christian Parker and Joe Casper, but
I don't know if this was reported personally or like however it was, if it was out there, but I know personally, I actually DM'd CJ Gardner-Johnson about Joe Casper because he attended his wedding in the offseason and people were like, he was around Eagles players. Yeah. Like, what's going on? Is he coming back to Philadelphia? What's going on with his future? And then it turned out that he was actually at Joe Casper's wedding, which is, I guess, he said he loves Joe Casper. So another player, he's not with the Eagles anymore, obviously, but it seems like all the players do love Joe Casper. And if you've watched any of the mic'd up videos throughout the season, I know Christian Parker would get a lot of shine, but it always felt like Joe Casper was right there as well, like talking to all the defensive backs, not just the safeties. It seemed like he would go over to the cornerbacks, which Christian Parker would do as well. So it seemed like there was a little bit of a crossover there already. So now Joe Casper is just kind of taking that official step forward where he's getting a little bit of a bump in title.
And he really deserves it too. Not that there's anyone that I'm seeing and that I believe that is out there to say, oh, Joe Casper shouldn't be the secondary coach. But he really deserves it after this last year of early on in the season when the tackling was not as great. And Joe Casper was, I don't know if he was voluntold or if he actually was the one that like, hey, let me do this. But he basically became the tackling dummy and just stood there with the pad and got tackled 100 times. I don't know. Like, you just watch that drill over and over and over and over. But to have someone else, because the comment had been made, and we talked about it a couple different times, like, you see the donuts that they roll out there. They're kind of tackling, but like, is that really helping? Shouldn't you have like a real body to wrap up and practice that part? And lo and behold, like 2 or 3 days after that, when it got brought up in a press conference, asked the question of like, hey, how do you prep for tackles and all this stuff? There you go. You see Joe Casper out at practice just getting tackled 100 times. I don't know if that was in his contract initially, but kudos to him doing whatever it takes to help the tackling.
It'll be funny if whoever the next safety coach is that comes in, if that's like they take on that role too, where Joe Casper's like, listen,
it's mandatory.
I'm the pass game coordinator now. Like, that's beneath me. I need you to go and take these tackles from these players. But I think it might have been Zach Berman or EJ Smith. I forget which reporter exactly. They actually asked Joe Casper about it, and he was like, does it hurt to take all those tackles? He's like, if they're tackling me with like the correct form, how we want them to, it doesn't hurt. So he's like, if I do hurt, if I do feel some pain, that usually means they tackled me the wrong way. So it's a way for him to kind of criticize guys in that regard too.
So they can save him, honestly. Like, it's like if he's getting injured, then it's obviously the team's fault. So maybe it's more of an emphasis, or at least more of the motivation to tackle the right way. Trent with a 2. Appreciate that. As we're getting close to wrapping up here. Giants hired Nagy. Rest in piss, Big Blue. Laughing my ass off. I was happy to see that they hired Matt Nagy. I'm not going to lie. As much just ridicule as the Eagles got nationally, and, guys not wanting the job, or not a highly coveted job, or Declan Doyle deciding that he doesn't want the Eagles and then coming back into the fray with, oh, well, the Ravens job, and he takes that as the OC and all the other stuff there. The Eagles got their guy for who was, available and out of the interviews, but got their guy in Sean Mannion. Lots of optimism there. Didn't really feel like Matt Nagy had a lot of momentum anywhere, based on just all the reports. Obviously, there were a couple rumblings of interviews. I know that there was the Titans trying to see what maybe there was, but just overall, like, nationally speaking, it wasn't like everyone's like, oh gosh, you better hire Matt Nagy, like, scoop him up. So for the Giants to go from what everyone thought, myself included, once John Harbaugh got the job, I was like, dang it, that's Todd Monken. He's unavailable. Him with the Giants core of young players, and obviously Jackson Dart, and be able to maybe take him to the next level. Wasn't wanting to see that. Not to say that Matt Nagy can't do something with his offense here, but if we're looking around the division, I do feel better about the Giants settling. Maybe that's too harsh for some people, but I think that's an accurate assumption for settling for a Matt Nagy.
Yeah, I was very critical of the John Harbaugh hiring when it first happened. I said I think both him and Mike Tomlin are pretty overrated head coaches, but like you mentioned, we thought that you were hiring John Harbaugh. It was almost like a built-in part of the deal that you were going to get Todd Monken as your offensive coordinator, right? And obviously that didn't happen. He landed a head coaching job. They can't really have control over that. If he didn't land a head coaching job, it seemed like he was going to be with New York. But also that defensive-wise, right? They didn't land a guy like Anthony Weaver, who worked for Baltimore. I believe he went back to Baltimore, right? To work under Jesse Minter now, where I thought that would have been another guy that they could have kind of brought in. And you have now you have Todd Monken, Anthony Weaver. Like, that's a good coordinator duo to roll with in New York and in a new regime. But now they got Denard Wilson, right, who was a former Eagles coach. I believe he's their defensive coordinator, and Matt Nagy, another former Eagles coach. I know from multiple years before Denard Wilson, but now he's going to be the offense coordinator. And I'm not going to lie, I texted you to the side. I said that I thought Matt Nagy was going to be like their backup option, right? If none of these young guys, these young candidates, surprised them during the process, like a Sean Mannion obviously ultimately ended up doing, I thought Matt Nagy would be like their fail-safe. Like, all right, if we don't like any of these guys, we'll just hire him. We can kind of just throw it out there like, oh, he worked with Patrick Mahomes and worked under Andy Reid. He's been here before. Like, we think that he has the experience, whatever. They can kind of just sell it that way. But they went in a different direction, which we both appreciated. And so I'm not going to completely crap on Matt Nagy now, but I think given the expectations for the coaching staff going into it when you hired a guy like John Harbaugh, it's hard to kind of talk that up and think that it's a great unit overall, especially when there were names like Charlie Weiss Jr. floated out there because of his connection with Jackson Dart, or they interviewed Cliff Kingsbury, right? It's like, oh, maybe this is what Cliff Kingsbury was waiting for, the opportunity to work with another young mobile quarterback like he did with Jaden Daniels, but didn't work out. It's rather underwhelming. My brother himself texted me that he was very disappointed. I've talked about how much of a Giants fan he is. He's not too happy with the coordinator hires, but I like some of the other position coaches they added. I believe it was like the Michigan offensive line coach. I always like guys hiring like up and coming college coaches and taking the chance on them, especially in the first year of a new regime. So it hasn't always worked out for the Eagles, but I think a new regime in New York they can kind of take those chances and roll with him. But yeah, Matt Nagy as your OC is probably not what you were hoping for when you hired John Harbaugh.
Apologies, John. Sorry about you. Not too much, but just for the Giants. Yeah, dealing with the same thing. So sorry. I think actually we got a super chat here from Demons with a 10. Appreciate that. What's going on, fellas? What's up? How's it going?
What's going on, man?
I do think that the Cowboys, as much as it pains me to say it, and you mentioned this earlier on your radio spot today. Congratulations to you. Well deserved. You should be getting those. But
thank you.
But I agreed with what you were saying there of Cowboys probably the most likely competition or the toughest competition in the NFC East as the way things stand right now. We're looking at the coaching decisions, right? Because there's so much to go with the free agency, the draft that could shake things up. But you look at the way the teams look right now, some injuries, guys coming back from those and all the other stuff there, and then the coaching staff that you take into account, it feels like the Cowboys are going to be that top competition.
Yeah, it's just, I thought they were a good team last season. I said it before last season. Obviously, injuries played a factor. They did get the better of the Eagles one time, whatever. Like, I just still think, I know the Giants, I like a lot of the young talent that they had. I've talked up Jackson Dart and just a lot of the players that they have in that building, but I do think it's going to take probably another year or two before they're competing for first place. Who knows? Maybe they can shock the world like that first year they did with Brian Daboll, and the Eagles have a stinker of a year. Somebody gets hurt, whatever. Like, you never know. Like I said, I never want to say never, but to me, I'm not buying the Commanders. I still think that first year was a little bit of a fluke. I don't think they really have the stuff necessary to build upon that. Whereas the Cowboys, yeah, they have to bring back George Pickens. Like, that's a big decision that they have to make. But they also have the 2 first-round picks, and they'll have some, like you mentioned, the potential of bringing in a Reed Blankenship and a Kobe Dean, like 2 positions where they're rather weak, where you can now bring in 2 guys that are familiar with Christian Parker and whatever defense he wants to bring into Dallas. So I think they're in a good position. I know we don't want to say it as fans of the Eagles and supporters of this team, but from the outside looking in, I think that's probably the biggest competition for the Eagles next season.
And we'll see how that'll change and if it's the same thing, because, you usually have a lot of turnover regardless. And you look at the schedule for certain teams, some getting the benefit of first place schedule, second place, third, last place. But it's totally unpredictable. Some years it's more than others. The odds of the Patriots and the Seahawks making the Super Bowl, I think, if I'm not mistaken, at the beginning of the season, if you had taken that bet, was I want to say it was like 6,000 to 1. I could be a little off, but I think it was something just crazy. So, but like you got the Seahawks that were dealing with the transition of Geno Smith, and then for Sam Darnold, which a lot of people, I was kind of like, is that really helping you that bit? I was kind of like, it's a move, cool, but like I didn't view it as a huge step up. Honestly, I was like, all right, you swap them out, but I'm kind of waiting to see where this thing goes. The defense, though, taking the next step for Seattle, schedule helping a little bit, but then you kind of just see them building the momentum. And then for the Patriots as well, I mean, Mike Vrabel is the longest tenured head coach in the NFC or the AFC East now. Like,
crazy
in one season, like 1 year, yeah, and expected some improvement. Yes, very easy schedule, but 14 wins, 3 losses. I mean, after they lost to the Raiders in week 1, I'm like, that's not surprising. I'm expecting them to lose some games that they shouldn't, but it's like I was probably, if I had gone back, and I don't think I did any official predictions or projections, but honestly, if I was doing that, I probably would have thought like they'll be about 500. They'll win some games, they'll lose some games, and yet they go on the run now and they're playing the Super Bowl. So it's totally unpredictable. You just never know.
You never know, and that's kind of the beauty of the game and the beauty of this past season as a whole, right? It felt like every week it was like, this team is now number 1 undisputed, like the Rams, right? Like they were like at the top, and then they immediately lost to the Panthers, and everybody was like, oh, wait, all right, now it's the Seahawks. And then they kind of stayed up there for the rest of the way. But it felt like it took until week 14 or 15 for people to actually believe that the Seahawks were legitimate contenders, whereas I was doubting them the entire time. I was doubting them going into the playoffs. I was like, Sam Darnold's just eventually going to fall flat on his face and throw a couple interceptions. Maybe it'll happen in the Super Bowl. Who knows? But it's just like, the way the season was going, it just kind of felt like nobody was ever kind of staying at the top and remaining there. It just felt like people were falling down or an injury would happen or something crazy would happen, they would lose to a team that nobody expected. So this Super Bowl matchup that kind of like fully encompasses the season as a whole. But I'm just excited. I know you obviously want the Eagles to be playing in this game, but I'll be somewhat happy to have like a stress-free Super Bowl viewing experience where my chest isn't beating out of my heart isn't beating out of my chest, and I can enjoy it and sit down, have some
breathe
wings,
a little bit.
maybe have a drink or two, whatever, like just things like that. So it'll be fun to kind of sit back and not have my blood pressure skyrocket through the roof.
It's true, yes. Although it was kind of that way last year. I mean, if we're being honest, not early on,
yeah.
but by like the third quarter, it was kind of like this is happening. Like we can just kind of have a party now. We can chill out.
The first half, especially when my brother was texting me like the Falcons Patriots score, like screenshots of that Super Bowl.
Oh my gosh,
and I was like,
yeah.
So I'm honestly like before the dagger, I was pretty much like, oh, that's what something's gonna happen. Like it's just like it's Patrick Mahomes. He's gonna do something ridiculous. But then it just never happened, and the Eagles cruised to victory. So it ended up being the most stress-free game of the season, it felt like.
Yeah, it was. It is funny though, because I was thinking the exact same thing, and not superstitious, but a little stitious. And I do remember being like, once it was that score for the Patriots, or the similarities there, I was like, just get off that score. Like, I don't care what happens. Just get off that score. Like, you got to kick a field goal, something. You got to do something to get off that score, please. And thankfully they did. So, I know we're understanding. John says I would rather have the stress. And I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way, but unfortunately we don't get that next year. We want the vicious cycle in the sense of what it's been the last several seasons. So that would be going to the Super Bowl. It's a first-year bounce and then the Super Bowl. So maybe next year, but we'll see. Lots of other questions to be answered. Eagles making moves. We're about 23 days, if I'm not mistaken, from the NFL Combine, so that'll be here before you know it. And then, draft boards, mock drafts throughout the season. Obviously, free agency starts a couple weeks after the Combine. And it'll be here. It's crazy how like initial it's like you're thinking, man, this is going to take a while, and the next thing you know is like we blink and the draft's there, and we blink again and training camp is there, and then we blink again and you're like, well, week 1, here we go. So
let's go.
It's we'll be ready for that. But lots of other stuff. Appreciate you guys as always. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and more giveaways and exciting stuff planned in the future as well. You guys are the best. Y'all know that. And we'll see you, as always. Go Birds.
Go Birds.